A player sitting at world number 28 with a Grand Slam title already on her resume should not still be searching for a coaching identity in year 5 of her professional career. And that's where, in my view, the entire Emma Raducanu situation becomes more than just a storyline. It becomes a structural issue that directly impacts her breakpoint conversion, her rally tolerance, and even the biomechanics of her service motion under pressure. Because when I look at Emma Raducanu right now, I don't see a lack of talent. I see a lack of continuity. And that's exactly why Mariam Bartoli stepping in with a very pointed suggestion. Essentially telling Emma Raducanu to mirror the long-term coaching model of Aryna Sabalenka is not just commentary. It's a diagnosis. Let's break this down properly, because there's a technical layer here that casual fans miss. Raducanu's split with Francisco Roig after the Australian Open wasn't surprising if you've been tracking her coaching timeline closely. Since her breakthrough at the 2021 US Open, where she played one of the cleanest baseline aggression tournaments we've ever seen, low unforced error count, elite first serve percentage, and incredibly efficient court coverage, she cycled through multiple coaching philosophies. Andrew Richardson, Torben Beltz, Dmitry Tursunov, and most recently Roig. That's not evolution, that's fragmentation. Each of those coaches brings a different system. Beltz leans towards structured point construction, Tursunov emphasizes aggressive shot tolerance and higher topspin RPM on the forehand, while Roig, coming from the Nadal school, naturally pushes for heavier spin and longer rally patterns. If you're constantly switching between these ideologies, your muscle memory never fully stabilizes. And in tennis, that's everything. We saw flashes of that instability during her Australian Open campaign. Her serve placement lacked clarity. She wasn't committing to wide kick serves on the ad side consistently, and her second serve sat up too often, leading to immediate baseline pressure. Her breakpoint conversion rate dipped not because she can't execute, but because under pressure, she doesn't have a deeply ingrained go-to pattern. That's coaching. Now compare that to Sabalenka. Since 2020, Sabalenka has worked with Anton Dubov, and the results are not just visible, they're measurable. Her double faults, once a major liability, have dropped significantly. Her service motion has been simplified, her toss stabilized, and her second serve now has more controlled topspin rather than reckless pace. That doesn't happen in 6 months. That takes years. And here's the key technical difference. Sabalenka's game identity is now fixed. She knows when to step inside the baseline and flatten out her backhand, when to use the inside-out forehand to open the court, and when to absorb pace instead of overhitting. Raducanu, by contrast, still looks like she's negotiating with her own game mid-rally. Now, I want to be fair here. There are contextual factors. Raducanu's run to the Transylvania Open final earlier this year. Her first final since the US Open actually showed improvement in rally construction. Her shot selection was more disciplined and she was using her backhand down the line more effectively to break patterns. But even in that run, there were moments where her point construction lacked a consistent blueprint. And then the illness during the Middle East swing disrupted her rhythm again. That matters more than people think. Tennis is a sport of micro-adjustments, timing, footwork, split-step precision. When you lose physical continuity, your entire baseline aggression model collapses. Still, Bartoli's point stands, you cannot build a top 10 game on short-term coaching cycles. Now let's talk about the internal dynamics, because there are rumors. Nothing confirmed, but consistent chatter within tennis circles that Raducanu prefers a more flexible, less authoritative coaching structure. She's currently working with Alexis Cantor and Mark Pecci, both of whom she trusts personally. That's understandable. Trust matters. But here's the problem. Trust without structure doesn't produce elite-level consistency. At the highest level, you need someone who not only understands your game, but is willing to challenge it. Someone who can say your forehand cross-court is breaking down under pressure because your contact point is too late, and then spend months fixing it. That's what Dubov did with Sabalenka, and it's why Sabalenka's transformation from a high-risk power hitter into a controlled aggressor has been one of the most impressive technical evolutions in modern women's tennis. If Raducanu doesn't commit to a similar long-term relationship, she risks becoming a player who peaks sporadically rather than consistently. Now let's bring in the numbers. Over the past 12 months, Raducanu's breakpoint conversion has hovered in the mid-35 range. That's not terrible, but it's not elite. Top 10 players typically operate above 40%, often closer to 45%. The difference comes down to pattern recognition and execution under pressure, both of which are heavily coach-dependent. Her unforced error count in longer rallies is also a concern. When points extend beyond 6 shots, her error rate spikes. That suggests either a lack of physical endurance, tactical patience, or more likely a system that hasn't been fully internalized. Again, coaching. Now let's talk about clay, because her upcoming schedule, Linz, Madrid, Rome, and then Roland Garros, will expose these issues even more. Clay punishes indecision. You need heavy topspin, precise footwork, and the ability to construct points over 10, 15, even 20 shots. You need to know when to deploy the drop shot, when to reset the rally, and when to go for the inside-in forehand. If Raducanu enters this swing without a clear coaching framework, she's going to struggle against players who have spent years refining their clay court patterns. And from a betting perspective, this is where things get interesting. Right now, Raducanu is not being priced as a serious contender for Roland Garros, and rightly so. Her odds reflect uncertainty. Meanwhile, Sabalenka remains one of the favorites, not just because of her power, but because her game has structure. If you're a bettor, you're not just betting on talent, you're betting on systems. And Raducanu's system is still undefined. Looking ahead 3 months, I see 2 possible trajectories. If she commits to a long-term coach, someone with a clear philosophy and the authority to implement it, we could see a gradual improvement in her consistency. Not immediate results, but a steady rise in performance metrics, higher first serve percentage, lower unforced errors, improved breakpoint efficiency. If she doesn't, we're likely to see what we've already seen, flashes of brilliance followed by early exits. Because at this level, talent is the baseline, structure is the differentiator. Now let's touch on the social media reaction, because it's been telling. There's a growing divide among fans. One side believes Raducanu needs freedom, that her 2021 US Open run proves she can succeed without rigid coaching. The other side, and Eileen here, argues that the tour has adapted, and she hasn't. Players now have data on her tendencies. They know how to target her second serve, how to extend rallies, how to force errors on her forehand under pressure. Without a coach to evolve her game, she's playing catch-up, and that's not sustainable. Bartoli's comparison to Sabalenka isn't random, it's strategic. It's about stability. It's about committing to a process even when results don't come immediately. And most importantly, it's about building a game that holds up under pressure, across surfaces, and against the best players in the world. Because right now, Raducanu is still searching for that identity. And until she finds it, she's not just competing against her opponents, she's competing against her own inconsistency. That's the real story here. And it's one that will define her 2026 season. And if we zoom in even further, the next 3 tournaments, Linz, Madrid, and Rome, are going to act like a live diagnostic test for Emma Raducanu, because on clay, there's nowhere to hide technically. I'll be watching her average rally length, her forehand margin over the net, and especially her second serve patterns under scoreboard pressure. Does she commit to a high kick serve to the backhand on breakpoint down, or does she revert to a safer, attackable delivery? That decision alone tells you whether there's a system in place. And this is where the contrast with Aryna Sabalenka becomes brutally clear again. Sabalenka doesn't hesitate anymore. Her patterns are pre-programmed through repetition with Anton Dubrov. Raducanu still looks like she's choosing in real time. And at this level, that split-second hesitation is the difference between dictating with an inside-out forehand or scrambling defensively 3 shots later.